and welcome to Sunrise Daily. We're coming to you live from Ekiti, venue of the Fountain Summit for this year. I'm Trengolin, what's up?
And I'm Ayamakine, good morning and welcome to the program.
Well, yeah, they'll be holding the Fountain Summit 2021, which is about economic development and investment. So, lots of activity going on within. So, we're right in the thick of things. I mean, the venue. So, of course, there'll be a flurry activity just going on around. So, you might just hear something start before we finish.
That sounds like a caveat.
Yeah.
But another caveat that's already making the rounds is the COVID restrictions, COVID protocols all over the place, which, of course, is one of those things that will guide today's event for the summit that's supposed to jumpstart or catalyze the economic activity in the state. Yeah. Don't also forget that the federal government seems to be towing the same line as Edo State, concerning compelling everyone that, you need to take the COVID vaccines. By December 1.
I wonder how that is going to pan out, though, because yes, the pros and cons for some of these things. Everybody wants, systems, structures, organizations. Everyone wants things to go right, but there are certain decisions where you wonder, did we take these kind of decisions with medical professionals? Because, there are people who have, they understand the systems, people have certain underlying challenges, and they feel, look, they may just react to certain things. How many people even know what they're allergic to in this part of the world? So, several doctors will tell you, look, don't just take any rash decision about some of these things. So whatever happens to medical freedom, by the way. So we know that in Edo State they're having that challenge. Is it enforceable? How are you going to carry that out? So it's not something that is straightforward.
There are too many things play around for me on this issue.
Yeah.
So the federal government is saying that, the Edo State government has said that. And guess what? Just yesterday, if you go to channelstv.com, you'll find one of the stories there. Lagos State is saying, look, 2 shots may not be enough. And you may need a third, shot. There are cases of people who have taken the 2 shots and may still die of it. But the number of those who will die from taking 2 shots of COVID may not be as serious as those who haven't taken any at all. And he's saying that against the backdrop of the mutating activities of COVID-19.
Well, there you go. That's with that one. Yes, we'll be talking about the summit here today on Sunrise Daily, so just keep tabs on that one. But we'll go right ahead and take you through some of the dailies and see how do they reflect goings on. Let's start off with Nigerian Tribune. The Tribune picks up on the item which we just highlighted. It's COVID-19. FG to enforce compulsory vaccination of workers December 1. It is a big one. Whoa. And then look at the writers. To issue revised protocol within 24 hours takes South Africa, Turkey, Brazil off restriction list. So, that's with respect to COVID-19 and how we're going about it, even though we're not just the only country that have got vax skeptics who think otherwise about some of these things. So, but how we deal with it may just be the distinguishing factor compared to some of those other clients and the kind of system, the base that they've got. So, it's something that we hope it's properly handled moving forward. But right beneath that lead story, PDP chairmanship, North Central picks Yocha Ayu as consensus candidate. Oh boy, so the word comes up again, consensus, We just spoke about that, just a couple of hours ago.
Yocha Ayu?
You remember? Almost on president?
Seriously.
Been a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's the thing about this kind of things in politics. You never know. You just never know.
Wow.
So there you go. That is Tribune today.
I'm spoiled for choice, actually, Chamberlain, I gotta be honest. But since we ended with politics, let me just go pick from politics. The Guardian newspaper has this one. APC, PDP in flurry of activities to decide critical congresses. That's what you have on the lead. APC insists on going ahead with state congresses, protests. That's right there on the front page, right under the major headline. PDP Northern Governors in marathon meeting to decide Ayu Shea's fate for national chairman. A consensus arrangement suffers setback as stakeholders shun meeting to reconvene today. I have no plan to return to APC, says Obaseki. Interesting. Save Nigerians, your lamentations, PDP tells APC. All of that part on the front page continues on page 2 of the paper this morning. And right under that one, World Sight Day. Sight loss costs global economy $411 billion in productivity every year. That definitely is something to take a second look at. 90% of people with blindness live in Nigeria, other poor countries. Definitely something concerning. Experts warn half of world's population will be short-sighted by 2050. Let me take that again. Experts warn half of world's population will be short-sighted by 2050. 1/5 others at risk of blindness. And
wow.
Okay, unoperated cataract, uncorrected refractive error leading causes of blindness. Beta cola-based eye drops clear immature cataracts, says ophthalmologist. Constant use of computers or the gadgets expose journalists to eye problem.
Journalists?
It's right there on the front page of the Guardian newspaper.
Well, there's a lot of hazards that come with this, so I'm not going to say come to the territory, but
it does come with the territory.
I hate to say that. I hate to believe that as well. Well, let's take a look at New Telegraph next. They are focusing on something different. It's about the national carrier. Intrigues, power play, may truncate project. It seems to be some sort of stop and start. On the first you heard about, yes, it was going to start at a certain point, and then there was some decision to hold on, predicated on, of course, what was playing off at the time. And now you see this one, and then you see the writer says, Noati's allegations spurious, Minister. Arik in 300 billion naira debt, assets worth only 150 billion naira. And then you also see AOC's denial to carrier will shut out 20,000 jobs.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's features there. I mean, wasn't it the other day where you read a story that spoke about how several professionals are leaving the industry, which is, in different agencies in that industry, to the private sector. And you thought it was protest. And now you've got a follow-up to that. I wonder what will become of this. So there you go. And then just beneath that as well, you see Congress, APC, malls, sharing arrangements in troubled state chapters. So, and then to avert parallel congresses, polarization, boycotts, inaugurate committees. So, all part of that measure to ensure that they do get it right before they move on to the larger society where they're supposed to present their person. So, so that's New Telegraph this morning.
Flip to Daily Independent, and it's talking about the 2022 appropriation bill. And guess what? Reps urge cuts in 6.45 trillion naira new borrowing. Want increase in oil benchmark to $60. Works allocation 500 billion naira. Stiffer sanction for airing MDAs on capital implementation, and ascribed to the President of the Senate. MDAs sabotaging Buhari's efforts to borrow. Okay, you may want to get a context of that one. Remember, the Senate President of the Senate have been quoted as saying, look, MDAs ought to be compelled to, each one of them should raise 1 trillion naira in revenue in a year. Okay, does that include the Literary Council of Nigeria or Nigerian Literary Council? Raise 1 trillion naira. But that's what you have on the front page of the Independent. And right under that one, Aisha Buhari canvasses increased synergy between first ladies and media. Okay. What does that really have to do with anything? Find the story on the front page, continues on the inside page.
Well, next is Vanguard newspaper here today. 2022 budget, 3.9 trillion naira for debt servicing worrisome. This is ascribed to reps. Well, some of them, they always had some challenges about, coming to terms with the status quo, about the budget. But they have a host of riders here today. The first of which we say, total public debt may rise to 5 trillion naira in 2022. Worry over deficit borrowings may increase budgetary allocation for works. Canvas zero budgetary allocation for airing MDAs. Malls upward review of budget oil benchmark from $57 to $60. Concerning this last bit, we had one of the economists who did suggest that will give us more leverage in terms of savings, and then you could navigate your way and do certain other things if you want to raise that. So it appears as though perhaps somebody might have caught that part.
Considering it.
Yeah, but if you're going to worry, if you're going to canvas zero budgetary allocation for airing MDAs, is that going to solve the problem or really worsen it? If they don't have any budgetary allocation for those MDAs, of course, the implication of that one. But who knows if it's going to be a deterrent? I don't know the thinking behind that. So that's about that lead story. Just beneath that lead story, you equally find e-transmission of poll results. Stakeholders task Buhari on assent to amended electoral bill. Quite a number of people did want to see this, and so, but it's not the end of it, though.
Harmonized is the question.
Well, they assume that certain things will just be for formality. And so when that does happen, they just want nice and easy.
But then
they consider this as the last major hurdle, anyway.
Fine, but considering the issues also raised by the INEC National Commissioner on Information was yesterday about the fact that a significant part of the process is still hugely manual, I hope that will also be factored into the conversation.
So hopefully that conference committee, these are issues that if they broach it, you never know, because he was advised to bring up the matter when you do come to that meeting. Flip to the back page of Vanguard today. Atletico Madrid, Onuachu signing, ready $23.1 million bid. That will be massive for him, for his career. So if that happens, it's going to be real huge. That's Vanguard today.
The newspaper is talking about infrastructure gap. FG private sector to bridge 350 trillion naira infrastructure gap. That's what you have as lead of the paper this morning. Amount equals Nigeria's 18 years budget. Plan will reduce huge Plan will reduce huge debt burden, but, as ascribed to experts, states to contribute 20 trillion naira, and NNPC to rebuild failed roads. NNPC to rebuild failed roads. Question there will be which ones. Anyway, well, there's been a lot of talk about bridging the infrastructure gap. That is going to take X amount of money over X number of years. Some say something in the region of 10 or 15 trillion every year for 15 years or thereabout. But that's what you have on the front page. If the federal government and the private sector will do that, some people have also spoken about the fact that why don't we commit certain infrastructure to the private sector? The president of the AFDB cited a private sector practitioner building a road that is that he related or compared with one that he saw in the UK, and I think that would be a good one if it is something that we can do. The story is on pages 5 and 23 or 21. And right under the picture you see there, that picture, by the way, is of IDPs at a camp in Maiduguri, a very sorry sight. Mixed reactions as FG moves to shut IDPs camps. What does that mean? You find the story on the inside pages this morning.
Yeah, leadership is next. I believe so. It's different from the ones you also have had. 1 year after NSAS protests, police foot drag on reforms. So, and the writer here says, police brutality continues amid attacks on stations' facilities. Over 20 police stations attacked. 47 officers killed in 12 months. So, it's quite challenging, really. As much as you want these reforms, but the police, they're humans as well. So those of them who lost, loved ones in the service, nobody will welcome any of such. So both the police, the society, we all have a lot of healing, reconciliation, understanding to build upon, grounds to smoothen, to ensure that society pulls together and work on those things. So we cannot afford to see it as us and them.
As you said, the police is also from the society.
Yeah.
What's interesting, the people who are supposed to ensure the police get their due per time, they are also humans and they are Nigerians. The people who are supposed to ensure that the policemen get paid, they get their due per time, the welfare conditions are taken care of as and when due. They are Nigerians and they are humans. And they should also try to feel it. What if this happened to me? What would happen? You know, if these people are indeed supposed to protect lives and property, and their own lives and property are not protected, for God's sake,
I wonder what that interesting point you made there, though. I wonder what that decision that announcement by the president to allow the funds to ensure community policing works, how that is going to impact on the relationship between the public, the society, and the police. Because remember, many of the servicemen who the members of the public meet, those in the front lines in the service, is usually hostile. That's what a lot of them know. So if you have that community, if you bridge that gap, you always talk about the trust quotient being non-absent or usually depleted. So whatever action that can be done or taken to ensure that we build on that will go a long way, because even the former Chief of Army Staff, General Burutai, always talks about how they wanted people to volunteer information. And you can't volunteer information if that trust isn't there.
Absolutely.
And most of the successes that police record globally based on information from public.
Certainly. You know, just a quick one on that is that in order to ensure all of these things that you have talked about are done, the comment of the president, or was it the vice president, someone top in government said, MDAs need to collaborate more.
Yeah.
If that collaboration was good enough within the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies working together as they should, they would know that service delivery to Nigerians is a conveyor belt of activities. And so whatever ought to go to the police part-time should go to them. If that collaboration was there, then collaboration among security agencies would equally be as fluid. Until we have that, Chamberlain, we will just be dancing around the issues.
So beyond just saying there'll be or threaten zero allocation to MDAs at default, they need to find out why do they default in the first place. I don't know if this retreat did any of such things.
The question to ask, why do they default? The answer is, I go there again, the Auditor General's report. The answers are there. Are we looking?
I give up. That's the this morning.
Okay, take a quick.
You know you always get me down when you put that line in.
But it's the truth, thankfully you know it. Nigerian News Direct very quickly. $12 billion loan projects. Health Ministry, 6 others sabotaging Buhari. I subscribe to the President of the Senate. Find the story on the inside pages, page 2 to be precise. What's all of that about? You find the story right in there. And right above the nameplate, deadline, December 1 deadline. Mixed reactions trail FG's order on compulsory vaccination. That one is right there. On the flip side, World Food Day. FG approves 600 billion naira for 2.4 million farmers. What does that mean? Find the details on the inside pages of Nigerian News Direct today.
You know, did it go under the radar when that headline about MG giving a nod for genetically modified maize? It appears to have. Because
who's talking about it, right?
Yeah. you know how people feel about GMO foods, and so with this one, you feel whoa, and that is a staple to a large extent.
You see, one of the, sadly, and I don't know, one of the things, it's a challenge. You often talk about the fact that governments have their job cut out for them. In the first place, there is a hunger problem. There's a food supply problem. On the other hand, we are not producing enough. Thirdly, the only way to expedite action at all is to genetically modify the process so that we can produce quicker, faster, and get more out for people. The question then is health. And those questions are on and on and on like that. That's why, everyone will also always tell you whatever it is that's likely to be side effects of any product, put it on the product so that people will know and be able to make up their minds.
Because we've seen how the clients handle this kind of scenario.
Absolutely.
And the challenge, the possibility, people going to the extreme, taking advantage of the populace or the population, and then they have safety measures, standardized measures and methods to ensure that people stick to the rules. Do we have that here? Well, we've seen how NAFDAC is grappling with so many things, even regulating the organic ones, and then we'll have this GMO. So which agency is supposed to ensure that people stay to the standards? Because there's certain people who wouldn't have it, but I know they're usually well-intended when they come up with these policies, but it needs to come across as such.
It's a challenge. They just have their job cut out for them.
Did you see Daily Times earlier? Well, let's take a look at that now. It says some MDAs sabotaging Buhari's efforts to provide infrastructure as ascribed to Lawan. That's what I thought you saw it previously. It's a similar headline from that New Telegraph. And talking about that sabotage. So also features here. And look at the first of the riders. Gives affected MDAs 1 week to appear before Senate Committee on Loans and Foreign Debts. Says Red Chamber won't condone sabotage to Mr. President's efforts to provide infrastructure. We've gone through this route before. The threat, in fact, they went as far as saying they were going to report them to the President, saying in fact, at that time, ministers, they were not appearing before Senate, they were not complying with certain things. We don't know what became of that, because if you're going by this headline, it suggests as though they didn't get much success with getting them to comply.
So what is going to be the consequence? There is a number of people who have appeared on our program have said there are no consequences for inaction until there are consequences for inaction or for action, for things you ought to do that you didn't do, or for things you did that you shouldn't have done. Until there are consequences, we're just going to be going around this rhetoric, from time to time. And if it is true, as constitutionally required of the National Assembly, Senate, and House of Representatives, to do the job of oversight and compelling ministries, departments, and agencies to do their jobs, and they are not doing it, what are the consequences? Interestingly, we have committees of the Senate, committees of the House of Representatives performing these functions. So they have a touch base with them from time to time. The question is, what is happening? Again, I'm sorry, I go back to the Auditor General's report, because they quote money. In fact, some people have said, look, you collected money, you didn't justify collecting the money in the first place, and you're asking for another one. Why should I give it to you? And some have said that it's not really that easy, because some of the money that the MDAs are asking for, they are for recurrent expenditure, paying salaries, running the offices and all of that. Granted. But then the people for whom these salaries are collected didn't do their jobs. Why should they get paid? I'm sorry, it sounds a little harsh, but if it was in the private sector, would the person get paid?
It is what it is, basically. Well, there you go. That is it when you look at somebody daily is here this morning on Sunrise Daily. We will be back in a moment and bring you information really about why we're here. It's the summit, so stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're coming to you live from Ekiti, venue of the Fountain Summit. And so, yes, we did say we're going to tell you why we're here and what is going on. And we have the man behind the vision himself, His Excellency, Dr. Fayemi, Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for coming. Good to see you, and good to be here as well.
Good to see you. You haven't been in Ekiti in a while.
Oh yeah, for years actually.
Well, I'm not even sure whether it's my first time or not. But I will first question that I want to. Are we happy?
Well, you're here, Charlie. What are your impressions?
Well, I think you want to take my job right now. Asking the question. Because first of all, I want to ask you, Your Excellency, is wearing two caps hasn't been easy. The cap of governing 36 states and governing Ekiti State at the same time. And then being able to come up with a thought like this. How's that been for you?
Well, governance is on a triparty, I agree. But the first one you refer to, governing 36 states, that's a bit of an exaggeration. I'm not governing 36 states. I'm just first among equals. And my colleagues are doing the jobs in their states. The forum is just a coordinating mechanism for peer learning, and that's why I even have a couple of my colleagues there today sharing experiences about what they're doing in their own subnational entities, but also as our own pressure group. Everybody has a union. This is our own union because we do get into all sorts of interesting engagements, particularly with the federal government. It's a federation and we are subnationals, and that sometimes require intensive discussions with the other side, which is the complementary side really, the federal government of Nigeria. But my primary assignment, the one that I'm elected to do, is as governor of Ekiti State. And frankly, that's the one that the ordinary people of Ekiti State will judge me by, not the coordinating, even though that one, you are also elected to do. Well, I'm also elected. But this is of direct and indirect election.
We'll see how that plays out. But you know, the different states, they have different approaches to this particular kind of event. Some first year, second, third, but this is the third year in the saddle for this term. And many wonder, well, yes, always good to have investment to shore up. Every state needs that. Why did you choose to come up with it now?
Well, it would have been up in my second year, but then COVID happened. And that made it impossible to have a gathering of this nature unless you want to have it virtually. And we do many virtual meetings anyway, but to pull together a range of players, right from the Vice President who is delivering the keynote address, my colleagues coming from various states, development partners, all of them now have protocols around travel. Where to go to, where not to go in the age of COVID. But that has slightly eased now, and it's giving us the opportunity to do this as a physical gathering of the people that we want. That's one. The second reason is that we actually did this in my first time. We did 2 sets of summits like this. But then there's been a hiatus between my first time and this time. So it's more showcasing how far we've come and then planning the future. And that future has to be a future beyond my own government. It has to be a future that focuses on the state and the opportunities available in the state.
Part of the literature that has been put out for this event talks about impact on people. And the first question anyone would want to ask is, first of all, what is there for me to rely on to come do business in Ekiti State? I'm talking about significant infrastructure, roads, power supply, and even airports, you know, and a number of other things. So people want to walk us through the foundations being laid by your government for this to not just be an event, but the beginning of a series of economic activities in Ekiti State.
Well, that's one of the things we are having here today is actually a session of those who have experience doing business with Ekiti. Investors that over the past couple of years have set up here, how we've worked with them, particularly through our own development and investment promotion agency, Ekiti, and also how we've helped to deal with the usual challenges that businesses, particularly new businesses, have wherever they go. We recognize the gaps you've spoken about, and we know that we are not Lagos or Abuja or even Kaduna. We are Ekiti. First, we suffer from a perception challenge of being seen as backwater people of the hinterland, and all we know them for is the state of professors. They go to school, they have a passion for education, and we then go, let's leverage that. If you're looking for skills and you want to set up with a relatively affordable and competitive labor, then come to it. But you also need other things: infrastructure, power, in this day and age, broadband access, airport, as you mentioned. And those are the things that the government started working on as soon as we got into office. So you would have seen that we were the first state to crash the right of way tariff from 4,500 to literally zero now for those who want to have fiber optic cabling and broadband access for businesses. And right now, we're benefiting from that. MTN and IHS laying cables around the state, almost 2,000 kilometers of that already. We have a cargo airport that is currently being constructed and will be finished before I leave office. We have an IPP that is also being constructed, an independent power project, in addition to the partnership we have with the Transmission Corporation of Nigeria to put additional substations in the state, also working with the Niger Delta Power Holding Company. We, of course, have roads, internal roads being reconstructed, new roads imagined in the state. But the challenge also is we have federal roads. And the story of federal roads, we all know. Well, so all of those things you're talking about, you have an enthusiastic and youthful population that are ready to try new things. We used to be a rustic, rural, agrarian people, and clearly we need to leverage on that and take advantage of how to move to a much more diversified economy, particularly agro-processing. So we have and all that.
Quite a number of interesting items you highlighted there, but we'll try and unpack them when we return in just a moment. Stay with us. The Fountain Summit for this year, His Excellency Dr. Fayemi shedding light on what this is about, why it's coming on now, and who knows why you just may look to come to Ekiti State and invest. Your Excellency, when you speak about those projects that you need to achieve, of course, naturally, looking at them, lofty projects. At the same time, I read some of your comments where you spoke about the private sector providing equal opportunity for certain people to ensure that things thrive. Could you talk to us about the private sector component in all of these? Because these projects have got to continue even after you're out of office.
As a matter of fact, the private sector component of it is the most critical component of it. I learned lessons from my first time in office. There were things that we did then as well, projects that started, like Ikogosi Resort, which had become a thriving entity before I left. But by the time I returned, 4 years down the road, it was completely shut down. And it was no longer functioning. And it was because we did not complete the concessioning of the facilities when we did the reconstruction, renovation in my first term. So one of the very critical things we're doing now is to ensure that whatever we get into, we do it via our investment arm, which is Fountain Holdings Limited. For example, we have a major project that you're going to hear about later, the dairy project that we're doing in partnership with Promesido, producers of cowbell milk. And we're producing monthly in Ekiti now 80,000 liters of milk through that. But we ensure that it is a partnership in which we have minority shareholders. So Ekiti only has 24% equity in that. So regardless of who is in office, it would not affect the business. So that's the model, and that's why we insist that we need to give comfort to the private sector if they want to work with states, and we need to ensure that even if they don't want to work with us, we provide the enabling environment for them to thrive in the state.
Well, one of the things that's you've gone to agriculture, so let me just go there again. You began by saying that that's one thing Ekiti State is known for, agriculture, and perhaps most, southwest states have that appendage to their names as well. But if you would adduce strength for any investor watching right now and listening to you talk, what would be the economic strength of Ekiti State in the area of agriculture, and what are the scale-up opportunities for any investor?
Frankly, we're one of the most fortunate states in this country as far as agriculture is concerned, because we're in between two climatic belts. We're in the savannah, so if you want to do cassava, if you want to do rice, this is a good home for you. We're also in the rainforest belt, so if you want to do oil palm, you want to do cocoa, you want to do rubber, Ekiti is the place to come as well. So with regards to the soil, we're good. What you want to then talk about is what other access do you have? Water. We have water across the length and breadth of the state. We have 3 dams, and we've just, in fact 4 dams, we've just resuscitated 3 of them back to full capacity. And in the northern part of the state, where we have the agro-processing zone, you have a dam there as well for irrigation, for supporting both commercial and smallholder farmers who already have a good land to work with. We are also ensuring that we focus on farm-to-market roads, which is always a challenge for investors. How do I move the goods that I have produced to the market before they get rotten and then I lose all my proceeds? So we are doing that with them, and basically we are also ensuring that wherever we can provide support, high-yielding seedlings, fertilizers, and other mechanisms, particularly workers. We set up a College of Agriculture and Technology so that we can produce extension workers that would be there to serve all of these farms that I imagine in the state.
Your Excellency, the extension services that you just mentioned is grossly ignored, and many people don't even understand what it means.
Exactly.
And maybe you want to expatiate on that a little, because most of the people who do farming in southwest Nigeria, most of them, as you very well know, economically we call them smallholder farmers, but they're just subsistence farmers. They just want to get by today for tomorrow. Add that to the fact that there was a report recently that a huge amount of food produced in the world, Nigeria inclusive, they go to waste because people are not able to transport them as a train due. How is Ekiti State managing that?
Well, I just talked about our rural access to markets program, which is a World Bank supported initiative, just to make sure that from our farms to the market, we try as much as possible to provide motorable roads for those moving goods. But you asked about extension service and people not knowing enough about it, and you're absolutely right. In fact, it was our extension services capacity that made us king in the 50s and 60s, linked to our marketing boards. We used to have commodity marketing boards. So the extension workers are those who go out to the rural farmers, not just to guarantee them off-taking, that look, whatever you produce, we will take it, and the marketing board will buy it at a guaranteed price. They also advise on seedlings, they advise on marketing, they advise on even your entire process from planting right up to harvesting, and they're there all the time to do that. In the 70s and 80s, they grew up into what they call ADP projects around the country. Again, World Bank supported agricultural development programs. But now many of those trained under ADPs are retired or about to retire. So you need a new generation of extension workers who understand modern agricultural technology, can work with commercial agri operators, and at the same time work with smallholder farmers and provide a link between smallholder farmers and the commercial operators in many states.
Well, Your Excellency, are there opportunities for Ekiti State in the livestock value chain?
Oh.
I'm asking because, my apologies, I remember the Vice President saying the value chain, the livestock value chain in Nigeria is something in the region of 30 trillion naira in value.
Huge.
Now, that is on the one hand, but all efforts to jumpstart that would seem like, hey, what exactly are we doing? So there's the NLTP, and then there's the talk about among ranching. What are the opportunities, in your opinion, for Ekiti State, and what's Ekiti State doing to
Oh, well, I just spoke to you about what we're doing with dairy. And one of the things we're doing is that in the dairy farm, which was moribund for 40 years, this Econ dairy farm that we've gone into partnership with Promosido on, we also, as part of our equity, we gave 1,000 hectares of land. So that for the cattle herd that we have there, they can also produce the feed on the farm. So it's a mini ranch as well as a dairy producing factory. And that's just one. And you need a replication of that on many scales. In addition to that, we are developing our own grazing facility where we signed up to NLTP, the National Livestock Transformation Program. And we've always argued that we need to transition from open grazing to sedentary grazing and then treat it as an agro-business that can have access to support, like we have anchor borrowers support for rice, for cassava, for any other crop that the central bank or the Ministry of Agriculture support. So it's just treating livestock the way you treat other normal crops because it's a business.
And speaking about such, you know, all of this cycle, the system, the off-taking, the infrastructure has got to be there to facilitate some of these things. And before we went to break, you spoke about roads, among several other items. And we know that time is money, time is spent. If the road is not accessible, you lose money by spending time on those roads. And you spoke about federal roads and that collaboration. What is going on with that? Because different states always have this complaint about roads, federal structure. What's happening there?
Bottom line, the federal government right now has a revenue challenge. There's no other way to describe it. It's not lack of understanding the gaps that are there, and I can tell you the minister is doing a yeoman's job trying to award roads across the length and breadth of the country. Many of the roads in our state, for example, they are awarded. They have contractors. But because the contractors are not paid, they cannot move on to the road and fix the road in accordance with the contract they signed with the Federal Ministry of Works. So we need to look for creative ways. In our own case, for example, in the Ado-Akure road, which adjoins our two states, we went to the Africa Development Bank, and they offered to support us to pay for the road, to dualize it and reconstruct it. And then we ran into headwinds with the federal government on that. So we transferred that to the federal government, and hopefully that would be resolved shortly.
Well, we're rounding off this conversation shortly, but let me just ask you this one. Ultimately, for you, it's the development of Ekiti State.
Absolutely.
And the question that I want to ask is, what's the plan, or how are the people of Ekiti being carried along with this project so that they can own it, and beyond your government, beyond successive governments, it'll be something that the people will say it's our own because we have benefited from it. How is it helping the human capital development and the personal economy of the people?
Thank you. That's the most critical issue to deal with. In my inaugural speech on October 16, 2018, 3 years down the line now, I was very clear that I want Ekiti to become the place to live, to work, and play. And if it is going to be that, you need to create the climate and conditions for that to happen. And the first thing is for the people in the state to feel a sense of ownership of everything that is happening, so that it's not just something that passes them by. Why do we need an airport? Why are we doing broadband, fiber optic connection around the state? Oh, is it just Fayemi and his modern Lagos-style Tokumbo agenda? Or where does this benefit us as a people? And I think we've been able to bridge that gap. The understanding is growing that we will not remain a rural state forever. And two, that we can take advantage of being rural and rustic and be modern at the same time. In tourism, in agriculture, we're known in this country, all over this country. When you say you're from Ekiti, this the state of professors. We can turn that to wealth. And that's why for us, we are also building a knowledge city for startups, for anchor businesses that want to play in the technology field in a manner that is more attractive than even Lagos can do. Lagos will be the first port of call for most people. But if you can create the climate and condition, the enabling environment in Ekiti, there are some people who will leave Lagos and operate here, particularly as we move into this technology age. One of the things COVID has done very well for us is that we now know I can live in Ekiti and work for a company in Lagos conveniently every day without having to deal with the madness that you guys deal with in that city.
That's the relative terminology now.
Don't let us protest.
You were going to talk about the youths. I hope you can lump these two together. Because when you talk about projects continuing after each other, you came up with a law and you thought that, well, whichever government comes in needs to be able to continue with the project that you started with. And two things. One, does that mean if, assuming, without conceding, that if there's a white elephant project, does the next government have to continue with it? And the next government can always come up with a law and say, well, they can repeal that law that you have there.
Oh, yes.
So what's the intent of that?
You're right about that. The sole intent behind that, when I came in 2010, which can be a little confusing to many people. You've been governor since 2010. Why are you still here? When I came in 2010, there were projects that Governor Segun had started. And I did not want to behave in the typical way politicians sometimes behave. Oh, if it's not my project, if I didn't start it, I just leave it there to rot. But it's the state's money. It's not Segun's money. So I completed all those projects. And then when I was leaving 14, virtually every single project, including this one that we're in, this civic center, was left, in fact, in a far worse state than I left it, because the government that took over from me did not deem it necessary to complete those projects. I talked about the Kogosi that went to rot after I left, and I can name several other projects like that. And that's what informed that law. That look, we want to have a transition law that really encourages governments that take over from other governments to, as much as possible, complete outstanding projects. Many of the projects are not likely, at least in Ekiti, because we don't have that kind of resources here. They're not likely to be white elephant projects. They may not be projects that you would have done in that particular manner, but they are likely to be projects that will serve the people. Governor Fauci started a market, a central market in Ekiti, which was about 55% completed when I came in 2018. And we completed the market because it's for the people of Ekiti. It's not for Fayemi. It's not an ego-massaging vehicle. It's about service delivery. It's about the development of our state. And that's what informed that law. Yes, you're right. Another government could come in and abrogate the law, but I would hope that the people who take over this state after I leave are those who have a sense of duty and a sense of patriotism to want to continue from where I stop, rather than subtract from it. The magic of Lagos that many people talk about now is continuity. The new governor will not come and stop what the whole governor did not complete. It will strive. I go around Lagos now, I see Governor Sanwo-Olu completing flyovers, completing bus terminals that Governor Ambode started, and a number of those things. And Ambode completed things that Governor Fashola started, due to what Governor Ashwadia and Governor Tinubu did. Governor Fashola continued. And I think this is a culture to imbibe for the overall benefit of our country. There's so many abandoned projects in this country that it's unbelievable that we can waste money in the manner that we've done. And I think we need to change that culture.
Just one more thing before we go. I know it's a tough, busy day for you. You've spoken about Ekiti. Everybody knows what to expect when you're here. Oh, you're from Ekiti. And then you spoke about continuity as well. So I know they say curiosity kills the cat. Would you be willing to take this wealth of knowledge, experience to the #1 seat to continue the project of the presidency?
Good question, Chamberlain. You are here to talk about our investment summit. Thank you very much.
About experience, continuity. Everybody wants to see good things continue, don't we?
Well, good things will continue. Nigeria needs good things. We will get to that bridge and we'll cross it.
What a way to dodge the question. Well, thank you very much indeed. We were speaking with His Excellency Dr. Fayemi, Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman, Nigeria Governors Forum, about the Fountain Summit 2021, which does coincide with the third year of his government, where he spoke about governance, agri, social investment, knowledge economy, as well as infrastructure. So just keep watching. We will be back in a moment. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. It's about the Fountain Summit 2021. We've got Akintunde Oyebode joining us next. He's the Commissioner for Finance and Economic Development. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, what a time to have this summit, Fountain Summit 2021. I mean, you're saddled with economic development responsibilities. How are you going about it?
So it's first articulating a vision of what we want Ekiti to look like. Everything starts with the vision. So we set out to do a 25-year economic plan, something that builds a legacy that outlives our government and even a few of the successor governments. So that 25-year plan really drives, the economic policy of the state government. We've looked at 3 critical sectors as our areas of focus. First is obvious. we're in Ekiti, the fountain of knowledge. I like to say we have the highest PhD per capita in the country. So it's leveraging that knowledge economy. And all of that is centered around what we've called the Ekiti Knowledge Zone, which is 1,000 hectares of physical land space and sits within what we call the Knowledge Quadrangle. So there's Afe Babalola University, there's Ekiti State University, there's Bamidele Olumilua University of Science and Technology, Ikere, there's Federal Poly, Ado, and there's still a few colleges sprinkled around. So that knowledge zone is going to be a special economic zone focused on the service industry. So things like business process outsourcing, to try to compete with Vietnam, with India, with Philippines, for that BPO economy. Things like software development, things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. Just leveraging the talent pool from the universities, but also ensuring that we have high-speed internet connectivity. So if you recall, the governor, via an executive order, slashed the cost of laying fiber from 4,500 naira per linear meter to 145 naira per linear meter. It wasn't just something, it wasn't a token of generosity. It was part of a strategic plan, to ensure that we attract the providers of high-speed internet into the state. We bring the talent pool from our universities, and now we've gotten a grant of $250,000 from the African Development Bank to actually build out the full feasibility for the knowledge zone. So that's on one, the knowledge economy. Two is agriculture. Ekiti people are largely agrarian. So we focused on some strategic crops. Today we have rice mills in Ekiti, GMK Foods, the mill is almost installed. Dangote and Stallion are coming. On the cassava side, we have companies like FMS Farms, we have companies like Promise Point, Arog, who are doing effectively cassava into starch and ethanol. And of course, our flagship PPP opportunities at Iku Dairy Farm, where we flipped 76% of the company to Promasidon investor, and that farm is now delivering 80,000 liters of milk per month from a farm that literally never worked for 40 years. The third and final sector is tourism, and that's why we're hosting NAFEST in a few weeks, but also optimizing things like Ikogosi Warm Spring, Arita Waterfalls, and the rich culture and heritage of Ekiti. So there are other things that underpin that I'll speak to, but it's really focused on three critical sectors.
But the one question that I want to ask is all about doing business, right?
Correct.
The natural question would be, what's the get-in approach like? Talking about the ease of doing business, parameters and all of that. Going from table to table is a task, a challenge, a disservice, and it's depressing. I mean, especially when you talk about, government at various levels. That's the experience many people have had. So to have attracted the private sector practitioners that Ekiti State has attracted so far, what was the model, and what is the model now for jump-starting and fast-tracking economic development and investment?
Thank you very much. So I had the honor and privilege of being the pioneer Director General of the Ekiti State Development and Investment Promotion Agency. The first thing to acknowledge is you need a dedicated institution of government to focus on the business environment, to focus on onboarding investors, and even when the investors come, to focus on aftercare. How do you support the investors when they are here? Because it's like dating or marrying. You meet a partner, you woo them, you convince them you are the right partner, but then the business really starts when the relationship has been established. It's the same way with investors. So the Ekiti State Development and Investment Promotion Agency, EGDIPA is a one-stop shop focused on supporting investors who are coming into state to onboard them. So today, you want to register as a taxpayer, you can do that digitally. Our GIS infrastructure is about to be launched, which means, of course, you can now, in a few weeks, you'll be able to search for titles electronically. You'll be able to register your title fairly quickly. These are things that affect the investment environment. The Ministry of Justice, collaborating with the House of Assembly and the judiciary, has also enhanced the enforcement of contracts process. There's a small claims court in Ekiti today, which means, small matters which normally should not cost you a lot, to resolve in the courts, can be resolved fairly quickly and fairly cheaply. So these are the things, these are the pillars that improve the business environment enforcement of contracts, land registration, tax payments, business premises registration. Many of these things are being digitized. And within the one-stop shop, we have people from the different agencies of government resident there. So you literally can go there and solve 90 to 95% of your problems.
But, we're still going to talk about those three pillars, but I want to use that analogy of marriage. Beyond the couple is the family. The family will also help to ensure that the marriage works, right? So, but family here, I'm talking about the relatives of the people the person who is bringing a spouse into the band. That's talking about the people in the community. What's the stake of the people in the PPP arrangements? What are the opportunities for the people of Ekiti themselves to invest? Because, you can't go and bring somebody from outside when there are opportunities that the people themselves could have taken advantage of.
Fantastic question. So let's take Ikunderi Farm as an example. Today, Ikunderi Farm employs over 300 people. Those people didn't come from out of space. They came from, particularly mainly Ikun, Ekiti, the host community. Right? So that host community today is thriving. The Oye Ikun Otun Road, which the government has just finished reconstructing and which will soon be inaugurated, that road connects Oye to Ikun because of that farm. It wasn't just done, it's a strategic investment. Because as a small state with fiscal limitations, we can't solve all the problems at the same time. So we've got to be strategic about selecting what we do. So we've connected that community to a significant road network. There's power in that community. Those farmers in Ikun are working on the farms at Ikunderi Farm. And of course, one of the things that we're planning to do is to build an arrangement for host communities where they have some stake in the entity. As long as they're able to put themselves together in a trust, then they also have to take into perpetuity. So that there's host community involvement and host about individual investors. Many of the investors that we're talking about are not out of Ekiti. Many of them are actually Ekiti people who are putting their money in Ekiti. FMS Farms is owned by an Ekiti woman, for example, who's a chemical engineer. She's on one of our panels later today, and you'll hear from her. She will talk about both her challenges and what has worked. A number of these agri businesses are owned by Ekiti people. Dr. Tokpe Aroge is a medical doctor turned farmer who's put his money where his mouth is. So these are not necessarily, yes, there's a Dangote conversation, there's a Stallion conversation, but many of the people are actually Ekiti people. And you spin off a lot of small businesses off things like this, right? So we think with improving the quality of broadband infrastructure, there are young boys in Ekiti, people like Shola Matthew, people like Kim Plus Technologies. These are young Ekiti technology entrepreneurs who are building businesses out of Ekiti. Last point, even when we set up our board of internal revenue and constituted the board, we also had a lady, Mrs. Lola Aluko, young lady who runs a natural beauty business, right? We put her on the board of the Internal Revenue Service as the voice of not just the entrepreneur, but the young female entrepreneur, to ensure that their voices are heard in our decision-making process.
Yeah. One wonders, at the end of the day, how do you measure your success? I know you set parameters and standards of measurement, because, for instance, and correct this is wrong since you're in finance, January 2021, we understand there was a reported revenue of 4.4 and then expenditure of 4.3. So practically everything goes on recurrent expenditure. Is there a target for finance in terms of if this amount of money comes in at the end of the day, I think we've done something. So what's the thinking in that regard?
Thanks, Chamberlain. I think you've got to also recognize that nation building is an unending exercise. So you keep improving. Now, what we've inherited is a state that has significant fiscal weaknesses. So you're right? The total revenues that come to state can barely cover recurrent expenditure. But you first have to enlarge that pie, and that's a process, right? And how do you enlarge the pie? You have to bring in new businesses. You've got to bring in private capital. Those private businesses have to grow and thrive and start to pay taxes, right? And that will take some time. So you have to do these things correctly. You can't circumvent the process. It's one of the mistakes that we often make, that we think that we can do these things overnight. Now, where are we today? We're bringing in new businesses. Those businesses are creating jobs, right? 5 years from now, we might no longer be in government, but you start to see the real outcomes. And how do you measure this? Of course, the first one is GDP growth, right? By how much is the state's economy growing? Second one is per capita income, right? How much is in the pockets of people? How much disposable income do you have in their pockets? Third one is employment numbers, right? You want to ensure that you drop unemployment below, in my opinion, 5%. Now, the fourth one in terms of the fiscal strength of the state is our first goal is that our IGR must first cover recurrent expenditure, right? And the mindset behind that is your recurrent expenditure is what should generate that money, should pay itself out. When you do that, you can then focus your federally collected revenues on capital expenditure. But at some point, you've got to ensure that your internally generated revenues cover your total expenditure so that whatever you get from the federation account then becomes some savings for the rainy day.
There is a concern being raised that it appears that Ekiti State is just winking in the dark. Just check their website now. Very little details about the development strides in the state. Is it a deliberate plan not to blow your own trumpets?
I mean, I think you can't, if there's one thing you can accuse us of, is that we focus too much on the work and not speaking about what we do as,
we hereby accuse you.
But that's why I'm here today, right? So we're correcting that. They say whenever you wake up is your morning, right? So, but I think on even our website, one of the things that we're good with, and we're now second on most of the transparency indicators, right? So if you look at all the transparency indexes, I think beyond one state I won't mention and give free publicity, we're next in line. And we've grown significantly. So we do a lot of proactive disclosures, and we've just revamped our Freedom of Information Administration portal and process to ensure that we let people know, right? There's nothing hidden. We do quarterly state of the state accounts, and we let all stakeholders know this is the state of your state, right? And I think for me, that's what starts the conversation. Because all of these things we're saying in here needs the engagement of the people who have to pay the taxes. You've got to earn their trust to say, we're putting our commonwealth in your hands, in your trust, to do the best for us.
So how are you working around the fact that whatever investments will come into Ekiti State is going to also feed off the larger economy of the country? So what's the approach towards that?
I mean, I think that's, again, a very good question. I think what you've got to do is there's always going to be limitations, right? So you have to answer two questions. Why Nigeria and why Ekiti? When we started, who have answered the why Nigeria question, right? Which is why you won't see us, up and down the place looking for foreign investors all around the place. We're very strategic about where we go and who we talk to. We literally talk to people before you see us get on a plane. It means 70% of the work is done, right? We're only going to close. But if you look at most of the investors that we have, these are all entities already operational in Nigeria that have already answered the why Nigeria question. So it's really just the why Ekiti question. And that's just a pragmatic approach to targeting investors that we've adopted.
We can't circumvent the fact that there will be challenges that people will have to contend with.
Of course.
From where you sit as the one in charge of economic development, what are some of those challenges that a prospective investor, whether from within Nigeria or those who want to answer the why Ekiti and why Nigeria at the same time, what are some of those challenges they have to contend with, and how is Ekiti getting ahead of it?
I mean, elephant in the room is security, right? Every time people say, will I get kidnapped if I come here, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter if I drive on those roads. I tell them I'm on those roads all the time. There's the perception, right, of insecurity. In Ekiti, we've invested heavily in security. We've got an emergency control center. We're putting cameras around the states. We have eyes in the sky. There are a number of things that we've invested in that I can't see on air. But we've put some significant investment in security and supporting the security apparatus. And we've also complemented that with, of course, our own Southwest Amotekun team, who then have local knowledge, right, of the operating environment to complement the work being done by the security agency. So that's the first thing, and that's how we're resolving that. Of course, the problems around infrastructure, power. We're just now doing a 4.75 megawatt IPP. The turning of the sword is happening in a couple of days. And that IPP is to complement the power being being consumed from the grid. But outside, the IPP, there are projects that we're doing with TCN, just to improve the transmission capabilities within the states. There are mini-grid solutions that we're doing in specific agro-alike. Farmers in those communities have power for small-scale processing. So power is another problem. I think the last one I'll talk about is transportation, right? I know you guys arrived in Akure. If you had gone through the Ado-Ikere road, I'm sure Chamberlain won't have this white grain on his face. But we're working with the African Development Bank and the federal government, right, to ensure that that road is reconstructed. And we're also putting in our own little airport in Ekiti, because Ekiti is a landlocked state. And so we're putting our own airport here to ensure that people can move in and out of the state fairly quickly. So these are investments. When we said we're doing the Oye-Ikun Otun Road, it's to get to Ikun Dairy Farm. When we say we do the Ilupeju-Ire-Igbemo Road, it's to get to Ire Clay Brick Limited, where you have to evacuate heavy-duty clay. When we say we're doing the Aramoko, Erijin, or Ikogosi Road, it's to ensure that if you want to go to Ikogosi one spring for the weekend, you don't go in there and the first thing you have to book is a massage. So our investments are actually very strategic to solve problems that we have identified as the problems that investors have. If you look at what we've done with water, just providing potable water, it's a big thing for agriculture as well. Because those dams, Ero Dam that we just rehabilitated, Ero Dam supplies Ikun Dairy Farm today and can supply farms within the special agro-industrial processing zone so that we can now have all-season farming in Ekiti. And we're doing that with Itapaji, we're doing that with Egbe Dam, so we identify problems that investors have, and then we use our limited resources to try to solve those problems.
Well, just talked about some tourist sites there, so sounds really interesting, but I guess that's what we'll focus on next. But we do thank you for coming on. Akintunde Oyebode, Commissioner for Finance and Economic Development, so talking about the Fountain Summit 2021. All the best, though.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's spend the next few minutes with Professor Rasaki Ojobakare, who is Commissioner for Tourism, Art and Culture in Ekiti State, to take us through what opportunities you can take. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
The only thing many people know about Ekiti State when it comes to tourism is Ikogosi. Are there more?
Plenty. Ekiti State is one large tourism site. Beyond Ikogosi, you have Arinta Waterfall at Ipole Loro. You have the Ero Egbe Dam, which is the largest artificial dam in West Africa, and is a big facility for aquatic activities. We're looking for investors to go there and put a 7-star Riverview Hotel facility there. You have Abanijori Hill, and we have all the hills. As a matter of fact, I hope you know that the meaning of Ekiti is rolling hills. Okay? And coming in from Lagos, from Kogi, from Ondo State, you just cannot miss our rocks, mountains, and hills everywhere. You have a cave. That's a cave that takes over 600 people. Is that in Ekiti? There. You have a Fajui Park in Ado-Ekiti here. So you have them everywhere. I'm sure you know about the Osun Festival holding annually in Osogbo, Osun State. It may please you to know that the source of Osun River is from Egede. Egede here, Egede Ekiti. That is where the source is. Okay? So, Ekiti State is one large tourism site.
You know, what funny thing, if you want to speak to me, that I've seen about Ekiti State, is like every town has Ekiti as a surname.
Yes.
Egede Ekiti, there are so many of them. Ado Ekiti, Kare Ekiti,
yes.
and all that. Is there any reason for that?
Yeah, that speaks to the homogeneity. Okay? Yes. Almost every town or village in Ekiti has one form of relationship or the other with the other one. And so we are all the same people.
Okay. Now, speak to the potential. I mean, you've talked about these sites, and there are reports all over the world that Africa is the next tourist destination.
Yes.
And Ekiti definitely has quite a chunk of that. Taking advantage of those would be in how it is, or how those sites are packaged for people. Is there a plan to package? Because we asked the Commissioner for Finance earlier about publicity. People may not even know these things, and when they don't know it, the least they can do is wonder.
Yes. Now, one of the things that are very important to this government is the mainstreaming, the deliberate mainstreaming of the tourism sector and the entire creative industry into the economic development of the state. Dr. John Kayode Fayemi started that, okay, in his first coming, 2010 to 2014. If you remember, the enormous investment that was, made into developing a site like Ikogosi. That was when Ikogosi One Spring really became popular and all that. And so when he returned in 2018, we learned from the mistake of the Ikogosi mistake, because when he left office in 2014, between 2014 and 2018, there was this lull, and that place crumbled before he came back in 2018. So we learned from that. So what have we been doing since 2018? We have been gradually concessioning these facilities to private investors, okay, so that no government will come tomorrow and run the places aground. Then apart from that, there is a law now in place, the Ekiti State Tourism and Hospitality Law. So there is a law to build confidence in the minds of would-be investors and also protect their investment in the state. And the law also regulates the practice in the state and all of that. Then, because of tourism, this government has invested enormously in the creating of the kind of environment where tourism thrives. Ekiti State has one of the best network of roads in Southwest. In fact, in Nigeria today, that is why all these big elongated vehicles have now left their common routes and they are applying Ekiti, from Lagos to Abuja. Okay, then Ekiti State today is one of the safest states in Nigeria. There's good security, because these are kind of things you make sure you put in place to if you want to run tourism business, because the tourists must believe that they are safe. Yeah. Okay, when they are with you.
That brings
now
the next question I was going to ask.
Yes.
If you could just allow that to happen. It's that how do you convince the average tourists? I mean, we have huge tourism potential in Africa and in Nigeria as well.
Yes.
How do you convince them to go to maybe any of the waterfalls, given the security challenge, kidnappings going on in some of those areas? What do you do? Yes,
and that's what I'm saying, that Ekiti State is safe. In fact, to tell you that Ekiti is safe, we have hosted more than 10 national events this year alone, 2021.
Tourist events?
Yes, and in about 29 days from now, the National Festival of Arts and Culture, the biggest event in West Africa, is holding in Ekiti State. Ekiti is hosting this year's NAFest, beginning on the 13th and ending on the 20th of November. And we are expecting thousands of people from all over the country and from other countries as well. And now, if they don't know that the state is safe, right, the state will not have been given the hosting right for those activities. So that is to tell you that this place is very safe. And in terms of publicity, you have to develop the product before you begin to now invest in publicizing the product, and that is the next phase.
Okay.
Right now, we built the environment, we built the products. Okay, what we are doing presently is to now make the place to become a destination by hosting all these activities.
Well, clearly,
and then
I think we'll have to book another time to come back.
Yes.
Because listening to you seems so sweet. You know, so many things to ask you, and I'm pretty sure so many things you would
Yes.
also like to tell you. But there are so many other things you have to talk about. We have to thank you very much at this time.
Thank you.
Professor Asaki Ojubakari is Commissioner for Tourism, Arts and Culture. We only spoke about tourism. We didn't talk about arts and culture.
He's one of the first professors in arts.
Can you imagine?
Yes.
Professor of dance at that.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for your time this day.
Thank you.
All right, we're back in a moment. Just stay with us.
Welcome back. We've got Dr. Mrs. Bingbe Adiri joining us next. She's a Commissioner for Education, Science and Technology. Good morning and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Well, what role is your ministry going to be playing in this investment summit?
There is nothing you can do without education. So to be able to reach out to people in the first place, you need people who are enlightened. And education is all about enlightenment, illumination. So, and if you do anything and you don't carry along the generation that will ensure that whatever you are doing is sustainable, it's as if you are just planning in the air and it is not sustainable. So education will be there, fully represented, and we will bring in our students. Then we go and cascade whatever it is that we are learning to the students. Because if you don't pick them from that level, the ability to sustain whatever it is that we are putting in place will not be there.
So how, tell us about the how of this. Is there going to be some sort of introduction or adjustment of the curriculum, having seen all of these practicalities with investments? How are you going to integrate that?
Most times we talk about curriculum. There's nothing wrong with our curriculum. We know that we have 3 layers when we are talking about education. You have the curriculum that will provide the general framework for people to work with. Then you now cascade the curriculum, you break it down to scheme of works. It is at the scheme of works level that you have what happens in a week, what do you do, then you break them down into the nitty-gritty. Because there is no how the curriculum can have all the details. Then after the scheme of works, you now break it down to lesson notes. It is at the lesson note level that you know what you teach the children. You have the examples, you have to break everything down to the level of the child because it even depends on the class that you are dealing with.
So is this aimed at teaching them at that very young age to be entrepreneurial or what?
We have trade works. We do trade subjects. And besides that, we've been talking about the fact, you know, in the time of our forefathers, it was good enough to just study physics, study chemistry, study anything, then people will start clapping for you, you're a professor, and you are doing excellently well because you are imparting the knowledge that you already took from some other people. Now you have to be market relevant. It has gone beyond the issue of teaching alone and telling other people what you have learned and imparting the knowledge to the other people. You have to be market relevant. So we now tell our children, it is not enough to be academically excellent alone. The hands, you must use your skills, other skills that you have. You connect the brain with the hand.
Beyond just the paper qualification.
Beyond just the paper qualification. You must know some trades, you must know things to do. Telling them how to live their lives without totally dependent on something else, on just one thing. We're talking about life skills now. We're talking about the ability to survive anywhere, to be able to do. We have graduates who make excellently. We have some of them who can do shoemaking. We have some of our children in secondary schools that were taught how to combat this pure water sachet and bottles. You just put sand, you melt them, and you have interlocking blocks. So we've been encouraging them. Number one, is to make their schools clean and their environment when they get home. Then they now know how to sort. In fact, they are interested in sorting out the sachet, the pure water sachet and the bottle from other waste. Then they are now interested because it doesn't cost much. It's just to pick the sand, put them inside. And we have some places where we have the erosion problem. So we've told them, you don't have to do something big at that level. Just start with something small. All we have to do at that level is just to attract them to it, draw their attention to the fact that they can meet the immediate need of their environment, the school and the community. We encourage them when you get to a place and you see that maybe in the school or where you live, you have some portals and things like that where people cannot, that is not enough. It has become a nuisance to the community. They will just get themselves together, get their bottles, get sand, melt, and make interlocking blocks. They have the blocks.
Essentially, it sounds like you have started the knowledge transfer or technology transfer.
Yes, without actually telling them.
Okay, but project now for us, because just as you said, we have to begin to hand over to them. And a good number of youths all over the country are largely disenchanted. And you're talking about people who are in their secondary school now, perhaps. Now, project another 10, 15, 20 years. What do you see happening in Ekiti State from this education that you are already implanting into people?
We will have Ekiti State that is not dependent on government jobs. We will have Ekiti State where people are able to use their talent. We will still have people who will go to government because there is no how you can do without the government. Some people have to make the policies. But it shouldn't be this, if I don't have government job, there must be something. And it is not something that somebody is pushing them to do. It's something that we emerge naturally because of the skills that they have been able to acquire without anybody pushing them. We observed some things, especially about children. When you let them learn by playing, and they naturally, if something naturally comes out of them, they do excellently well. But if you instruct them, if you insist that you must do this, you must do that, at times it doesn't work. But so I see Ekiti where everybody, it will be so easy for people to just have either white collar or blue collar jobs.
Very interesting. Well, thank you for coming on. Dr. Aderi is the Commissioner for Education, Science and Technology. Well, back in a moment. Don't go away.
But it's with Dr. Banji Filani, who is Commissioner for Health and Human Services. Because why? Health is wealth. It seems like we're making more wealth by just making health. Is that correct, Dr. Banji Filani?
That's absolutely correct. The more health you have, the better wealth you're likely to have. A healthy person becomes productive, and if you're productive, then you have a chance to contribute to the economy.
How does that tie into these events?
Absolutely. Well, you start from the realization that if you're not healthy, you can't even be here, right? And you being here means that you're able to carry on your job. If you're able to carry on your job, it means that you're contributing meaningfully to the society. And by contributing meaningfully to the society, you're helping yourself, you're helping those who depend on you, but also helping the country at large.
When investors come into Ekiti State and there is an emergency, what's the plan?
We have a tertiary...
And I'm not just talking about fire emergency, I'm talking about health emergency.
So think about it from point of accident, right, to get into a hospital. Ambulance services, and then moving from there to the hospital. We have 3 tertiary hospitals in the state. We have the State Teaching Hospital, we have the Federal Teaching Hospital, and we have arguably the best private sector hospital in Nigeria, in Abuad. We have general hospitals across the entire local government. 16 local governments, we have 22 general hospitals, all at different levels of capacity to be able to handle different cases.
So can they get the best of healthcare in short notice without going through lots of bureaucracies?
Emergency cases typically should not require bureaucracies. So yes, you will be able to get the best of healthcare.
But how about human capital development here, human capital development protection, or whatever it is that you think is important to ensure this investment attractiveness and economic development isn't just rhetoric, but an experience?
It's a good question. So if you start with human capital development with the person at the top, right, and which is His Excellency the Governor. He provides the political will and the authorizing environment that allows people like myself and my colleagues to be able to function appropriately. Then you look at a civil service that is robust. You have people who are willing, who are committed to getting work done within the system. I have 3 permanent secretaries, 1 in Hospital Management Board, 1 in the Ministry of Health, and 1 in SPHCD, all with the relevant capacity to be able to drive sustainable programs. But more importantly is you move away from the civil service and then you go to the clinicians. We have very motivated consultants, we have motivated senior registrars, people manning, even in the face of significant challenges, not just in Ekiti, but across the entire nation, right? Manning general hospitals, working in our primary health care development centers. And as a government, we are alive to our responsibilities, doing the necessary trainings, providing the necessary inputs to enable them to be able to provide service delivery.
I'd like you to give me a little more assurance on that. You talked about civil service, because the experience many people have heard all over the nation is, look, when it comes to civil service, they do things at their own pace and not at the pace of the government that they're supposed to be a part of. So, please, I need a little more assurance. This is an investment summit.
I'll tell you a story. 8 years ago, a partner, Pat at the time, came into Ekiti and a couple more states and supported us with something called the DRF. Ekiti took it on board, and Kaduna, 5, 6, 7 other different states actually had to come learn from us. What am I trying to say? You have people here who have the commitment, who are thinkers and doers, and who want to go above and beyond.
Okay.
You would have, as with everywhere, you would have places where the people drop the ball, and that's the responsibility that I have as a commissioner, to provide that technical leadership and to provide the oversight to drive things.
We could go on and on with you as well. You guys are just it's so easy to talk to you guys. But for now, we have to thank you, because you know, we have to go. Dr. Banji Filani is Commissioner for Health and Human Services in Ekiti State. I guess that way we call it.
Oh, yes, indeed. It's been very interesting. So it's Sunrise Day came to you live from Ado Ekiti, where the Fountain Summit 2021 will be taking place. So we thank you for letting us be a part of your day today. We hope you keep it logged here at Channels. I'm Chamberlain.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful and productive day.